Thank you very much. And then Dr. Anthony, floor is yours.
Thank you, Moderator, Your Excellency Minister. I'm going to go country by country based on the responses that came in. One, I would like to congratulate Indonesia for learning the program that you're doing on cash transfer. And I like the idea of leveraging on digital technology to see how we can mitigate some of the challenges. So well done, Indonesia. Switzerland, I second you. I don't know if I should speak louder and louder. Young people should be the center of everything that we discuss. I've been saying this in Africa everywhere that I speak. There's no policy that is being made in Africa now that is not about young people. Even politicians cannot be elected without young people going to vote. If 70% of the population, 1.4 billion people, are young people, clearly it speaks for itself. And one of the things that I say, boardroom should have young people. It's about time white hair, gray-haired hair, with all due respect, to retire and let young people into the boardrooms. It's about time for ministries and governments to have young people in decision-making machinery. So I second and I hear what is coming from Switzerland. China, I like your idea of recovery that is inclusive, sustainable, and resilient. I think this is a lesson for all of us. Recovery that is inclusive, sustainable, is a good way to think about how we recover. Djibouti, yes, crisis is very semantic. How you define crisis and how I define crisis is different. It's very contextual. You are very right there. But I think we don't have one size that fits all. Solutions to all the crises that we are facing, there are some that are regional level that we need to share lessons. There are those that will be country specific and would require local context to be able to address them. So my suggestion, my thinking here would be to prioritize and identify what works where and how. If this is what is working in Djibouti, then prioritize there. So having a menu of the list is not necessarily a bad thing, but identifying and prioritizing such list and knowing when to work, how it works, what should we start off with will be very crucial if at all we are to move towards getting actions, because you can even have a list, a menu of actions from here to Timbuktu, and you might not end up doing anything. Azerbaijan, I like your suggestion on revising. I think things are not cast in stone. If there's one thing that we are learning from the crisis is that there's a need to recalibrate how we think, how we do things. And for those who are bureaucrats and decision makers, it's not an easy thing to do with political pressure left, right, and center. But I think it's very important also to increase public awareness. It's important to incentivize. We withdraw your powers from the people. Without them, you're nothing. Pardon my language, my moderator and chair. So if we draw powers from the people, we need to respect the people. We need to create awareness, and we need to make sure that people are aware of what governments are planning. Resources and investment in SDG is very critical. European Union, I like the question, how do we draw in private sector CSOs and trade unions? Private sector, very crucial. There's no doubt about it. If we think of development, the three wheels of development, the state, private sector, and the civil societies, there's no doubt that we cannot address some of the challenges that our countries are facing if private sector is not involved. They're very crucial in creating jobs. They're very crucial in investing in some of the sectors that the government cannot invest for many reasons that we know of. They're very crucial in many areas in mobilizing resources and so on and so forth. CSOs are very, very important. I sit in a board in Tanzania, the Foundation for Civil Society. And one of the things that we do is to make sure civil society is a watchdog, to be able to, tell the government and say, hey, here you're doing right, here I think you can do this that way. I think civil society can enhance governance, so they're very important. Civil society can enhance voice of the voiceless that cannot speak, so they're very, very important. The same goes for trade unions in ensuring that we're able to get back. Zimbabwe, rural-urban divide is real and it's a challenge. What are the better ways? And so how do we make social protection shock response? I think here my response would be futuristic thinking. One of the challenges, if there's one thing that COVID has taught us, is that we always react to things. We do not anticipate, we don't plan. Like in game, the war games, you simulate what your enemy would look like, right? But no one simulated COVID. But there's lesson that is coming out of this, that going forward, future pandemics, we need to be anticipatory. We need to be able to anticipate things and our preparedness to respond to shocks and challenges. It could be COVID, it could be anything else in the future. Now, how do we make social protection shock response? It's because we can anticipate. In case of crisis, what happens? In 2020, I led a research project in East Africa funded by Bill and Melinda Gates. And the idea was to try to see how countries can coordinate themselves in responding to shocks. And what we found is a dysfunctional response. I mean, countries do not speak to each other. And you are bordering, you are sharing borders, but they don't speak to each other. So these are the things that we need to think about. In future pandemics, how do we respond? How do we coordinate efforts at a certain level to be able to work together? And then Senegal, before I come to my conclusion, financing public goods. This is a very radical idea. And you asked about legal status. What would, essentially, if you think about global public goods and the idea I talked about global public investments, we need to restructure the international public finance completely. Because the country-based model that the World Bank and the IMF are using has proven that it doesn't really fully address the global public goods that we are facing, rather global public bads that we are facing at a global level. And challenges that are transboundary, challenges that are transcending beyond our countries, they require a different way of thinking in terms of how we can mobilize resources and hold each other to account in a way that is a win-win, without one being senior, another one being junior, to be able to address some of these common challenges that we're facing as a globe and as humanity. Now, to conclude, I want to talk about two things that I said I'll mention. One is date in Africa, and second, I want to talk about social safety nets and young people. Three things. I think that crisis is not only an African phenomenon, now we know. Of course, by and large, African countries are affected. We also know that there are other countries outside Africa that are affected as well. And I think the challenge that countries are facing is, with hiking interest rate, you are confronted with a dilemma. Should you continue to pay interest rates that you have to, or should you use that money to invest in social safety nets? So that's a dichotomous that is really quite challenging. And I think there is a need for relief plans to be given to countries and prioritized what really matters to save the humanity in the face of this multifaceted crisis. Young people, I want to come back to this point again. All the plans that are being discussed here, all the good ideas that are being discussed here, at the center of this, there should be young people, there should be women, there should be most vulnerable people that we know of. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much. And then Ms. Hicks.